Great. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Maggie. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the CAAL-CBPA members attending this webinar are located on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqey, and Innu peoples, and this webinar is brought to you by CAAL's Digital Preservation and Stewardship Committee in partnership with CAAL Portage and ACENET. I will ask that everyone attending please make sure your microphones are muted during the presentation, and you can unmute to ask questions at the end or just use the chat. So I am Lee Wilson. I'm the Service Manager for the Canadian Association of Research Libraries Portage Network, and I'm on secondment from ACENET, where I work as a research consultant specializing in research data management. So the topic of today's webinar will be institutional strategies for research data management, and we're going to talk about this in the context of the forthcoming tri-agency policy on research data management. And presenting with me today are three speakers from Atlantic Canadian universities. So we have Jasmine Hoover, who is the Scholarly Resources Librarian and the Liaison for the School of Science and Technology at Cape Breton University. Jasmine deals mostly with electronic access issues, but is passionate about scholarly communication, including data management. She was previously a data librarian and is involved in several Portage working groups, which help her to keep up to date and contribute with what's going on across Canada related to data. Our second speaker is Erin MacPherson. Erin is the Research Data Management Librarian based out of the McRae Library at the Faculty of Agriculture in Truro. She is the subject liaison for agriculture and one of the main contacts for research data management at Dalhousie University. Our third speaker is Maggie Neilson. Maggie is an academic librarian at Acadia University's Vaughan Memorial Library. Maggie maintains coordinating responsibilities in geospatial and numeric data services, including research data management. Since her arrival in 2015, Maggie has offered RDM-related services to researchers at Acadia University. In addition to her service responsibilities, she's also a member of Acadia's Senate Research Committee and will chair the In Development Senate RDM Working Group. Outside of her institution, she sits on the Council of Atlantic University Libraries, or CAAL, Digital Preservation and Stewardship Committee, and also co-chairs, interim, the Portage Data Management Plan Expert Group, or the DMPEG. Maggie is also the very proud owner of Tippy, a rescued Maltese Shih Tzu mix. All right, next slide. Thank you. So to begin, I'm going to go over the three main components of the draft tri-agency data management policy, research data management policy, with a focus on the institutional strategies requirement and guidance resources that have been developed by a Portage working group to help institutions develop their strategy. Then we will hear from our three speakers who will describe the approaches taken at their institutions, and this will include a discussion of the major challenges and lessons learned during this process. Finally, I'll open up the floor to questions. We're going to save questions until the end of the presentation, but please feel free to write questions in the chat at any point. If you're totally new to research data management and want to learn more about the basics, the Portage website, specifically under our Training Resources tab, has a growing suite of primers, good enough guides, and learning modules, including an RDM 101 course. So you can feel free to use these to catch up and reuse these materials in any way in your own teaching. So for the tri-agency RDM policy, for a little bit of context, in 2017-2018, representatives from the Canadian tri-agencies, so that's SSHRC, NSERC, and CIHR, traveled to institutions across the country to solicit feedback for developing their RDM policy. Jeff Moon, the Portage director, accompanied them on this RDM roadshow. In June 2018, a draft version of the policy was released for community consultation. The draft version of the policy is linked in the presentation, and I will also add a link to the chat box in case you haven't had a chance to read it. Okay, so the policy is based on three main components or pillars, the first being a requirement around institutional strategies. So this requirement states that each institution administering tri-agency funds will be required to create an institutional research data management strategy, and we'll provide more details on that later on. The second pillar is around data management plans, or DMPs. And the policy states that all grant proposals submitted to the agencies should include methodologies that reflect best practices in research data management. The agencies encourage grant applicants to complete DMPs as an essential step in this research project design. For some funding opportunities, agencies may be requiring DMPs to be submitted to the appropriate agency at the time of an application. In these cases, DMPs may be part of the adjudication process of the grant. The policy doesn't talk about how the adjudication process will or should occur, nor does it detail a specific format for DMPs, but it does recommend that researchers make use of standardized tools or templates for DMPs, like Portage's DMP Assistant. The third pillar is around data deposit, and this requirement would stipulate that grant recipients will be required to deposit into a recognized digital repository all digital research data, metadata, and code that directly support the research conclusions in journal publications, preprints, and other research outputs that may arise from agency-supported research. The agencies are encouraging researchers to provide access to the data where ethical, legal, and commercial requirements allow, and in accordance with the standards of their disciplines. Whenever possible, the data, metadata, and code should also be linked to the publication with a persistent digital identifier like a DOI, or a digital object identifier. So we do not yet have a firm date for when this policy will go into force. On the website, they talked about a final version being released in winter 2019, but did suggest that community consultation could modify this timeline. We do know that implementation is going to be phased, with each component being released separately, and the first to come into force will be a requirement for an institutional strategy. More information about the policy can be found in the FAQ section of the Tri-Agency's website as well. Next slide. So just to note, last summer, Portage convened 3 town hall sessions to discuss the draft policy and get feedback from the community. These discussions were synthesized into a formal policy response that has been sent to the Tri-Agencies, and our response is available on the Portage website. Next slide. So what is an institutional RDM strategy? An institutional strategy is a concise and directive document that outlines how an institution, like a university or a research institute, will increase its capacity for effectively managing its research data. A strategy document could be in the form of a policy, a statement, or a workflow process. Strategies would typically be part of an institution's overall research policy framework and require input from various institutional units, such as the research office, including ethics administrators, library services, IT services and departments, and/or faculties. Next slide. So why create an institutional RDM strategy? Well, institutional strategies are aimed at promoting excellence, research excellence within the university and research community through the adoption of good data management practices. They will support institutions in evaluating their current capacities and capabilities for RDM, identify what changes are needed in order to comply with funder policies and other RDM requirements, help institutions develop a roadmap to build capacity for research data stewardship, and ensure that research data storage, retention, and availability for access and reuse where appropriate. And finally, because the institutional strategy is going to be required under the new RDM policy. Next slide. So where does the Institutional RDM Strategy Working Group come in? Well, this group was convened in November of 2017 in anticipation of the policy draft. The objective of the group is to provide institutions with resources for facilitating discussions and processes in preparing an institutional strategy for RDM. This is achieved through the development of a template and associated guidance document to support institutions in articulating an institutional strategy, as well as supplying a curated list of resources for related policies and best practices, all of which are available on the group's page linked below. Membership for this working group was drawn from organizations from across the broader RDM landscape and included representation from CAAL, the Canadian Association of Research Administrators, or CARA, Canadian University Council of Chief Information Officers, or CUCHIO, Portage Network, members of the Tri-Agency Data Management Working Group, Research Data Canada, Vice President's Research, as well as CASRA Canada. Next slide. So the main outputs of the group are the institutional strategy template and the associated guidance. These resources should be thought of as living documents, and they can be updated by community input and by the working group sort of as needed. There are four main components of the institutional strategy. The first is to raise awareness about the benefits of best practices and emerging policy requirements. So under this component, institutions should think about developing a plan for engaging with stakeholders on campus and communicating the benefits and requirements for RDM. Depending on the nature and size of the institution, this plan could involve a range of materials and outreach activities that would include identifying stakeholder communities, recruiting local data champions, developing awareness materials targeted at different stakeholders, and conducting outreach and awareness building sessions for RDM. The second component is assessing institutional readiness to manage and realize the potential of our research data holdings. So here, institutions should undertake a review of the current data landscape on their campuses and assess existing capacity and resources for managing the research data produced on campus. This can be done by looking at what similar institutions are doing and defining a sort of ideal state for RDM on your campus, undertaking a survey of institutional data assets and data management practices on campus. This survey is going to be discussed further by our next speakers. Could also be about evaluating existing RDM services and then identifying any gaps in these services. The third is formalizing RDM practices through the development and adoption of guidelines, best practices, and policies that advance good practices and assign responsibilities for RDM. This will set the tone and underscore an institutional commitment and expectations around research data management. So this could be achieved by, and the fourth is defining a roadmap, and this will help with capacity building over the medium term and to ensure research excellence, efficiency, and transparency. Building on and in some ways summarizing the first three steps, a roadmap should consider what are the current practices in place, what are the gaps, how can we meet or mitigate any identified gaps, a timeline for when these actions will occur and in what order, who will be responsible on campus, what resources will be needed, and then strategies for securing said resources, and finally, how will we assess this roadmap over time, and what does success look like at each stage? Next slide. So now that you have a general understanding of what an institutional strategy entails, for the next part of the webinar, we're going to hear about the approaches being taken at 3 Atlantic Canadian universities, starting with Maggie Neilson from Acadia.
Thanks, Lee. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about building relationships surrounding RDM and working towards a collaborative institutional strategy, which we have not yet done, but it's going to be part of the goal of a working group that we're working on putting together. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So the research office at your institution can be one of your biggest allies and champions when it comes to pursuing RDM projects on campus, and that includes an institutional strategy. They have their finger on the pulse of research culture on your campus and hold a broad, overarching perspective on the needs of researchers in a variety of disciplines. The research office on your campus knows your audience and can help you identify gaps in RDM services and understand the needs of your researchers. They can offer insight that complements your own expertise in research data management. In addition to providing that valuable lens, they're also able to promote RDM initiatives as part of your joint interest in supporting your institution and researchers. Having an additional voice on campus to champion RDM best practices can be really helpful in expanding your service reach and gaining buy-in from researchers. Initiating and developing that relationship can happen in a number of different ways. For me, I had reached out to the former Dean of Research and Graduate Studies soon after I arrived at Acadia in 2015, and with his support, my colleagues and I ran sessions on open access publishing and research data management. From there, I was contacted by the Research Office Administrator, Barb Baker, to provide background information and guidance in her role as an administrative committee addressing RDM. This contact further blossomed into co-authoring the response of Acadia's Research Office to the draft Tri-Agency Research Data Management Policy, working with the current Dean of Research, Dr. Anna Redden, to explore ways in which we can prepare and support our researchers in RDM practices, and developing the membership and terms of reference for a cross-campus RDM working group that will report to and funnel recommendations through the Senate Research Committee. My role on the Senate Research Committee provides me with an additional avenue through which I can champion RDM on campus. So developing the terms of reference for the RDM working group with Anna was a really useful exercise. It allowed me to look more closely at our stakeholders on campus and identify invested folks who might have been overlooked if I hadn't sought her input. Even a small exercise such as this really broadened my perspective on RDM activities on campus. Working with Anna has allowed us to prepare this committee in a meaningful and hopefully impactful way. The goals of the committee are those which you'd probably guess. Part of the committee's mandate is to identify gaps in RDM services on campus, identify the needs of our researchers, assess our need for an institutional repository, and of course, the subject of today's webinar, develop an institutional strategy using a wide range of perspectives we'd be able to tap into given the diverse membership of the committee. By having a direct route to the Senate Research Committee and the Senate, this group will be a powerful mechanism in raising awareness of RDM best practices, elevating its profile as a campus-wide concern, and signaling RDM as a priority for the university. So I think one of the things that I wanted to emphasize going through this process and developing a relationship with the research office is the really important takeaway was that the realization that I didn't have to do it alone. Like many other librarians, research data is one part of a diverse and broad portfolio that I keep, and I knew I was going to need help with carrying out larger projects on campus. So I'm grateful to have the support of RGS and a committee that will help to prepare our researchers for engaging in RDM practices. One thing I do want to emphasize is this: you know your stuff, so be confident in your expertise surrounding RDM. A part of this, too, is clarifying roles should you find yourself in a committee that has a wide range of ideas about RDM and what needs to happen on your campus. For me, my role is to provide frontline support for researchers participating in RDM, so I maintain a focus on services and guidance. I'm also going to have a lot of ideas for institutional strategy and other pursuits that will take place at an administrative level, but I'm really going to need the expertise and wisdom of the folks that live in that world. The same can be said for any technology-based initiatives, such as a repository. I'm going to need the help of those people who live and breathe technology on campus. It's not about me stepping aside from what I do, it's about complementing my knowledge base with those of my skilled colleagues to take a more holistic approach to RDM that everyone on campus can see themselves reflected in. And on to you, Jasmine.
All right, hello everybody. Jasmine here from CBU. I'm going to talk a little bit about CBU's experience with the data management strategy. CBU is a relatively small institution, but our numbers have grown really quickly in the last 2 years. We have almost 5,000 students now. So the conversation here started in 2017 when our VP academic went to a national meeting. He heard about the upcoming tri-agency policy and called a meeting with IT, the Office of Research, and the library. So that was our first informal kind of group meeting. I already had some experience with RDM from working in the States where there's already requirements around research data management. So the research admin officer and I got started on some awareness and also on a draft strategy that we could pass along to a not yet formed working group. So we found that using the recommended Portage template for our institutional strategy was really, really useful. Even though it was created by larger institutions, it worked really well for us as well. And I'm going to go through each of the 4 parts and kind of what we did in relation to each. But first, I'm just going to talk about the challenges and the benefits to being a small university working with this kind of work. So our main challenge is that we don't have enough people that are invested in RDM here or who have any kind of RDM experience or have RDM as part of their role. We don't yet have a formalized group that's tasked with leading the initiatives as well as the training and support. And we also don't have the kind of IT support that a lot of the larger institutions have. For example, we don't have our own data repository. So we're going to be relying on a lot of the Portage tools. Some of the benefits are that we can initiate things here rather quickly. It's small enough that you can contact the right people and get the ball rolling on things. We also have access to what's happening on campus really easily. I was able to go to each faculty school meeting to discuss the tri-agency requirements. When I went to do the formal survey that's part of the strategy, it was really quick to get through ethics and to get out to faculty. And I think once it becomes a bit more pressing, so when the tri-agency says, okay, this is happening, here's the date, we're going to be able to roll it out relatively quickly here. Next slide, please. Oh, there they are. Okay, so there's 4 parts to the strategy that Lee went over, so I'm just going to say what we did for each one so far. So the first one is raise awareness. So I went around to each faculty's school meeting and presented the upcoming tri-agency policy and the changes that were going to be coming through. Now, this was over a year ago, so I'm thinking that I'm going to have to do this again, but again, it was pretty quick to be able to get in as part of their meeting schedule, so that was great. Faculty had a lot of really good questions about the policy and what it meant for them and their workflow. The second one was assess institutional readiness. So there is a formal survey that is suggested in the institutional strategy document. The survey has been sent out by several institutions across Canada, and so we ended up doing that survey last year. We sent it out through the VP Academics office. We only had about 10% fill in the survey, and I think that's because I sent it out the week of exams, so it wasn't a great time to send it. But we did gain a lot of really useful information from it. So faculty, again, they had really good questions about the timing and the specifics. You know, when would I submit my data management plan? There's lots of variation at CBU when it comes to types of data, where the faculty store their data, for how long. So we're going to have to do a lot of customization when it comes to helping faculty. The researchers were very interested in assistance and workshops on kind of all areas, so creating a DMP, uploading data, sharing data, and a lot of our researchers saw the benefits of open data, but mostly answered that they would give data to people upon request. Another part of institutional readiness is assessing your existing capacity. So for us as a smaller institution, we don't have a lot of capacity, but luckily for us, Portage has already created a lot of the tools that we're going to be relying on heavily. So they already have the DMP assistant to help our faculty create data management plans. There's Further for data storage and sharing, which is the repository. And there's a lot of really good training material that we're going to be relying on a lot when this rolls out. But one thing we do need is to formalize roles and responsibilities for who's going to do that work here at CBU. That leads to point number 3. This is kind of the nuts and bolts part, and it's definitely the step that we're going to be working on next. So we have created the draft institutional strategy, and we're kind of doing things backwards. Most of the other universities have created a working group, and now they're working on the strategy. But we've already kind of done the legwork and created a rough draft. And our next step is to bring in faculty and researchers to form this working group, to go through the draft and really customize it for CBU, and then draft a policy that we can put through Senate. And point number 4 is defining a roadmap. So this will be the other thing that the working group is going to do. We're going to work on a roadmap, look at the gaps and what we need to fill those gaps. And that'll be a really good thing to get researcher input in and kind of bring forward to ask for some resources or for some staff or some role changes and that kind of thing. So that's our next step here. And next, Erin is going to talk about the experience at a larger institution at Dalhousie.
Hi, so it's Erin at Dalhousie in the Truro campus. I'm going to start talking a little bit about our experiences with RDM in general, and then our experiences creating a draft strategy and working with the document. So with research data management, we've kind of been meeting monthly as a team since at least 2015. That's when I was brought in, and I was hired to work on the Truro campus, but then I gradually started doing more and more kind of for Dalhousie as a whole, the entire university. Our research data management team consisted of representatives from across the university, so academic technology services. We had some representatives from the research office. Lee from Portage is fortunately in Halifax, and we have a few representatives from the other Dal libraries joining us. So we meet monthly and we just talk about new initiatives and share updates and anything new that's going on. One of the things we did do back in 2016 was develop a project charter, and that was to kind of identify the resources that we already had, any gaps that we might be experiencing, resources we might need, and also we did some goal setting. So we had created a work plan at that point. When I look at it now, I had a look at it yesterday, it's a little out of date. You know, positions have changed, and of course our goals have changed as time has gone on. But that document was really very helpful in working with the institutional strategy document and guidelines. So with respect to the institutional strategy, the University Librarian had created a research data advisory committee back in late 2017. And that committee consisted of representatives from, again, from across the university, but some key people who would be interested in data management, like the Associate Vice President Research, some representatives from the Office of Research Services, Academic Technology, some faculty representatives, and then some folks from the university university library as well. We did create a working draft of the strategy. We had a small working group. So again, the project charter that we had created was really great because we had outlined some of these items already, some gaps, some of our key stakeholders. So that was really helpful to get us started, but the guidance document was very helpful. So we completed the draft of the strategy in late 2018, but we're in the same position as the other universities. It's a working draft. We're still looking for more feedback and for others to kind of make it Dalhousie's. We just kind of have we have just some of the key items filled out and are looking to make it more formal in the future. So next slide, please. Okay, so the institutional strategy, that was led by our Associate University Librarian Research with assistance from myself, and we have a small working group. So some of the key guidance documents points that we found interesting and that we are working on and are the first one, raising awareness. So one of the challenges we'll be talking about is Dal is pretty big. We have geographically dispersed campuses. So I'm based in Truro. So we want to maximize our time, but we need to provide services to everybody. So we have our research data management team with representatives from across the libraries, but also key stakeholders from across campus. And we're trying to raise awareness through those committees, but also through some of the activities that we are doing. We have a research boot camp, which we offer in person and online on all campuses, and we do data management sessions in those. They're open to graduate students, postdoc, and even faculty. We have online webinars like we're doing today, but we also have the Scholarship at Dal series. Those are great lunchtime online sessions that people can attend from the comfort of your office. We recently had a liaison librarian training session. That was key. That was something we've been wanting to do for a while. We had a very good turnout. I was very pleased. It was during reading week in February, Friday afternoon. We had 17 people attend a 3-hour training session. But that was really key because that not only, it kind of redistributes the work, portions of the work, but also raises awareness even further. So our liaison librarians are frontline people working with researchers. And so this gave them the basic tools to be able to provide information. And again, I'm here and our RDM team is here as well, but just to spread it out just a little bit further. The second point was assess institutional readiness. So we're currently working on implementing the data management survey, and those results, again, will be incorporated into the strategy. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. Some gaps also that were identified in the strategy. We're going to talk about those collectively in the challenges section, but again, one of the things that kind of stood out for us was, we are a large campus, we're a very diverse campus, and RDM is still emerging. So, being flexible, being adaptable for change, these are some of the things that, we're looking at. And defining a roadmap. So again, the existing project charter helped with this, and it really helped us with goal setting and identifying who we already had on our team, who we could potentially ask, what resources we would need, and implementing timelines. And as I mentioned, timelines always change, so this is just a roadmap, but it's a great planning document and really can help you not only feel more prepared, but get more prepared. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things that I found interesting in the document was section 2.2, undertake a survey of institutional data assets and data management practices on campus. So my question was, should we do a formal survey? Because the survey, it's a lot of work. A number of institutions have already done these surveys. Would that, could we just do consultations with faculty? We already know some of the practices that are happening on campus. In the end, we decided we're going to do a formal survey. I think for us, it's important. We're just to see and confirm and have evidence of what practices are going on, what we need, and also what our researchers will need. That's going to be helpful not only for us to see what they need, but for them, so we can develop these services and resources specifically for our researchers. So again, the Portage strategy template and guidance document was extremely helpful because it takes you through step by step all of those questions that you need to think about. Some of the positives from being a large, being a large institution, we do have a large pool of people to draw from. We have several campuses. We have we do have a lot of resources. We do have the capability to host our own data repository. So we do have our own instance of Dataverse right now. We have some support for data management from some faculty. And one of the big takeaways, and I know the others have talked about this also, is the importance of relationships. We've had good pre-established working relationships with the Office of Research Services and ATS for a few years now. And it's really helpful to just have that person, who you can call if you have a question. And they have contact with researchers all the time, as do we, but they're working with them in that environment as well, and just to have that line of communication open and that they're aware of things that are happening, and then we're aware. It's a really good thing to have those relationships. So I think the next slide is actually going to be Lee, where he's going to be kind of moderating us for our challenges and lessons learned.
Great, thanks, Erin. Yeah, so on this slide, we've compiled sort of a general list of some of the challenges and lessons learned at each institution. And rather than speaking to each point individually, we decided that our speakers will talk about sort of the main challenges in implementing the institutional RDM strategy on their campuses and then how they overcame them. So with that question in mind, let's start again with Maggie.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lee. I think since we haven't yet developed an institutional strategy, I can't necessarily speak to that. But I think one of my biggest challenges just in general surrounding RDM is that faculty buy-in. I've done a few different sort of outreach initiatives, and I don't know if at this point in time that interest is quite there yet, but that's why I'm so excited about this relationship that I have with our Office of Research and Graduate Studies, because I know that avenue and that relationship is going to sort of help me get that buy-in really sort of broaden my reach in terms of spreading the word about those different services, and just having that extra support there, I think is really important and really helpful. And I think, too, one of the challenges for me is something I did mention when I was speaking earlier, was about, having a diverse portfolio of things that I'm responsible for, data being, one piece of that. And when you're at a small institution, it can be challenging when you have multiple different hats you have to wear, and you might feel like you're not progressing as quickly as you'd like to, just given the constraints of your time and your energy. So again, that kind of speaks back to the value of having that relationship, because I don't have to do it alone. And I'm really grateful to have that support sort of outside of the library as well. So that, for me, I think would be my biggest challenge, just being at a smaller institution, and maybe not having everyone on board at this point in time for RDM initiatives, but I have that important relationship there to really complement my expertise, and I think moving forward that's going to be really, really helpful in growing RDM on our campus at Acadia.
Jasmine here from CBU. Our biggest challenge, again, is the staffing and just the capacity here. Everybody here is really stretched right now with our huge influx of students, and it's hard to add another role and responsibility. And so my point on there is that Portage is a very useful resource, and we're going to be relying on it heavily here.
Erin here at DAL. I would also agree, resource-wise, I'm the data management librarian at a large institution, but I am the only data management librarian. And again, this is just a portion of my overall job responsibilities also. And I'm at the Truro campus, the small campus, as opposed to the Halifax campus. But that is a challenge, but I'll address kind of one way I'm working with it is by doing a lot of online sessions and kind of partnering with things with our research boot camp, where we're offering kind of a suite of workshops that are related to the overall scholarly communications and research process. So that's helped, because I can provide that service to the entire campus from wherever I am. But again, yes, I do, and especially where RDM is an emerging service, and I kind of thought of the saying, hurry up and wait. We're preparing, but it's not yet completely here. So that is kind of a challenge also, is, getting prepared and waiting, because another thing was a challenge was how am I going to also provide training, or was liaison training, like let's get more people interested in RDM. But I think the session that we did have was really useful. And so addressing challenges of getting that awareness through to your colleagues or other people who may work in the libraries or who may be doing RDM is just raising that level of awareness. So I feel much more confident now that people have an idea of what we're doing and what's happening, and hopefully they have the tools to help them answer basic questions, or they can contact us if they need further assistance. So that's how we're addressing one of those challenges with getting the word out there about RDM.
Great, thanks. So I think now we will open up the floor to audience questions. So feel free to unmute your microphone and ask directly. Otherwise, you can type your question into the chat box and I'll sort of moderate it. Okay, so we have one question that have come in on the chat. So Pamela asks, what are the advantages of preparing ahead of the tri-agency RDM policy, and what made you want to hurry up and wait instead of just wait?
I guess I can answer this. I think the hurry up and wait is more maybe what I felt was that it's coming. So I thought we better be prepared. Wasn't alone in this in our institution. So I was hired with data management in my job description, so I knew it was something we'd have to be preparing for. And I can only speak for myself at Dell, but I like I like planning. I'm a planner, so I think it's good to at least have some of the resources in place and kind of know where you are, because we do know that this policy is going to come.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answers your question.
I have a question about how you organized your surveys.
Sure.
Specifically, in each individual institution, what area of the RDM policy did you emphasize on your surveys?
I can talk a bit about the survey. It was created by a few people from, I think, Portage and some of the major universities. So it wasn't like we were making up our own survey each. It was a formalized survey that was sent out kind of across Canada. So if you wanted to look at the questions, I think there's contact information on the Portage website, and you can get a hold of the survey to take a look at it.
I would love to do that. Thank you.
I'll put the link up.
Okay.
Oh, please. That would be very helpful.
Okay, so I see someone is typing. Does anybody have another question over the mic? Okay, if not, well, we wait. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's just Erin. I just put a link up to the RDM Survey Consortium, and there's a number of reports from UBC, Queen's, and a few other institutions, and you should be able to get the questions from there. There, you can see some of the universities had done 3 surveys. That was kind of when this first started, but now
I'm
they're
not seeing the link.
Oh, you're not? I put it in the chat box.
It's there in the chat box. You need to expand the chat box by clicking on it. It should be in the bottom left-hand corner.
This is Trish from NSCC. I'm wondering if anyone of the speakers can had any experience with resistance or a lack of wanting to plan within your research departments, and if so, how you dealt with it.
Do you mean within the research office or with faculty?
Within the research office.
Well, we have very well. I'll just speak from Dell. I haven't really encountered that yet within the research office. We meet with them regularly. Every month we have, it kind of rotates 1 to 3. It's either one of 3 people who attend our meetings, yeah. So I haven't had that experience yet, or I haven't had it at all.
Yeah, it's Maggie. I would say the same thing. I haven't had any resistance at all. Quite the opposite with the research and grad studies on campus. I also come from a campus that's, I find, quite a tight-knit community and very close. We are a very small institution, and I don't know, in addition to just having that relationship, we also, have a lot of friendships across campus and a great appreciation and understanding for each other and what we do. So I haven't yet encountered any resistance to this type of thing, quite the opposite. And I don't foresee me ever really running into anything, in terms of a roadblock from the research office.
Jazz here again. We don't have quite as cozy a relationship. I mean, we do have a good relationship, but there's only 3 people working at our research office, and there's only 4 librarians. So it's more that we just haven't had time to make meeting regularly happen. So there is kind of a gap there, I think, and we do need to do a better job of getting together more often with the research office.
This is Erin from Dell again. One of the things we've done is well, when I came on in 2015, there had already been this monthly meeting happening, and so our RDM team meeting, we had invited the research office to come, so a representative. And the only thing is they're extremely busy. So occasionally someone can't attend, but I think just extending that invitation, and also looking at ways that this relationship is beneficial to both. I know with the ethics office here, they have the answers to questions that I get asked a lot. I can help them also with data management planning and resources that we have coming up. So there's ways to partner that will be, I think, that can help foster that relationship.
Great, thanks everyone. So sort of related to this question, Pamela asks, someone mentioned faculty buy-in being a challenge. Could you please expand on that?
Sure, it's Maggie from Acadia. I guess I can speak to this. So one of the things that I've encountered during my time here at Acadia, and I'm sure this isn't unique to my colleagues at other institutions, was that faculty buy-in. I've done a number of different outreach initiatives, actually having in-person consultations with faculty members, as well as hosting different types of not necessarily workshops, but just even information sessions on RDM. And for those types of things, particularly those sort of like open sessions, not a lot of turnout for those types of things. And the conversations that I've had with some of my faculty members is that they don't necessarily see themselves reflected in RDM, and that tends to also come from maybe the arts and humanities, who really see RDM and the way it's talked about and the way it's sort of promoted, is it more being a science-based or science-focused initiative, less so than something that they can see themselves in. So that is a challenge. So when I speak with faculty who are in the sort of arts and humanities, there is work to be done in terms of making it so that they do see themselves in RDM, and a lot of that comes down to the language that we use when talking about RDM. I think obviously faculty in the arts and sciences researchers have data, but they might not necessarily call it that. So I think that's a challenge too on our end in terms of how we talk to everyone on campus, particularly those that might not see themselves reflected in these practices. So that for certain is a challenge. And then I might hear on occasion that they just don't see a need for it, or that it would not benefit them in any way, and that's fine. And these are just individuals. I wouldn't say that this is the general overarching theme that no one's interested, but there can be sort of just a lack of interest, or even just a little bit of pushback, and that can vary discipline to discipline as well.
I have a question about dealing with that type of pushback. How do you manage to make the arts and the humanities care about research data management? Have you pointed out to them that their own expertise in the arts and humanities is research of a kind?
I guess I can answer that again. Yes, absolutely. So I think even though that is sort of feedback that we do get initially, the conversations that I do have with those faculty members, usually sort of it's me sort of resetting that perspective on RDM and maybe using some different language surrounding that. And then, eventually through these conversations, they do see themselves reflected in that, even if it's just talking about the type of data that they'd be gathering, and saying, if you are extracting portions of, manuscripts, or you are gathering up poems of a certain variety, those actually count. And I guess it's just sort of even breaking it down in terms of even writing a data management plan and pulling out all the different elements of that and working with a faculty member to say, when we see this part of a data management plan, the format, or how you're collecting it, where it's going to be put, those questions can all still be answered by someone in the arts and humanities. It's just a matter of sort of showing them that and having those conversations.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
And I'll also say that this is sort of connected to the raising awareness component of the strategy. So on the Portage side, we're working to develop more materials specifically aimed at the arts and humanities as well as digital humanities to show where and how they fit into RDM. So for example, I've given a data management planning workshop aimed at digital humanities, and the data management planning expert group is also working to compile data management plan exemplars from the arts and humanities.
This is Erin from DAL again. I just wanted to add to the faculty buy-in being a challenge. One of the other issues is I think time as well, because I have a lot of webinars and sessions that I really want to attend, and they're all on my calendar, and then when the day comes I'm like, oh, I can't do this today, I have too many other things to do. So what we've also been doing is trying to get grad students and postdocs and research assistants. So I find we've had really good uptake for that because they're working with data all the time. And so that's been one of, I think, our successes, is especially with our boot camps and our online sessions. We've had some really high attendance as opposed to our smaller sessions. So that's kind of one of the ways we're trying to address that also.
Jasmine here from CBU. I just wanted to add to that when I went around and talked to the faculty, they were pretty receptive to it, but some of the problems are that the policy is vague and it also doesn't have, a firm date. So they just really want to know, what do I have to do when I get my grant? Like, what are the main top 3 things I need to get done? And so it was really hard to say, you might have to send in a DMP, but you might not. Like, you might have to save your data. So I think when that gets firmed up, then we'll have a lot more buy-in from faculty.
Thanks, all very good points. I also wanted to mention the idea of data champions that we talked about a little bit in the presentation. So sort of starting with a few, hopefully vocal, champions of RDM and developing services directly with them that you can sort of use to show success across campus. So I don't know, do any of the speakers want to talk about their experiences with data champions?
Okay, may I expand to that question?
Sure.
Do any of the speakers have experience with data champions on their campuses? Okay, so none of your campuses have anybody who is vocally in favor of this kind of...
I think there's some people out there at DAL. Lee probably knows what I'm talking about. There's a few people who teach data, and there was a research data management course offered at SIM, is that correct?
Sure, and I was also going to suggest that, Maggie, you might have a data champion at Acadia in the form of Anna Redden.
Yeah, I was
the
thinking.
Laughter, I'm going to go with yes, she does.
There are some, yeah.
I totally do. I was just thinking about the question in terms of, like, outside of my relationship with RGS and Anna, in terms of, like, faculty who are vocal data champions. But I absolutely do have Anna as a champion for RDM, which is going to, is incredible, and I'm so grateful that she is on board and is interested and does see this as a priority for campus and our researchers, and as something that needs to be acted on to support our researchers properly. So I'm hoping that through that relationship, as time goes on, it's nice to have someone else, on board championing into this, instead of just me on my own sort of ringing a bell and going around campus and saying, RDM, everybody, it's really important. It's nice to have that extra voice there. But in terms of just, researchers on campus, I know that there are some who have come to me and are interested and want to write data management plans and want to talk about these things. But in terms of a very vocal champion, in the researcher group on campus. I wouldn't say that I have one of those yet, but hopefully we can work on that, Anna and I.
Okay. So you have champions, even if they are within your groups. Do you find that having those champions out there ringing their bells is alienating any of the other departments?
I haven't experienced that. This is Erin from DAL again, but this is just me. I haven't. No.
No alienation? Excellent.
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of either.
Yeah.
Good, because sometimes when you get a champion up there on their soapbox ringing their bells, there will be the alienation. People will start going, ag, it's just her again, or ag, it's just him again, and wander off in the opposite direction as rapidly as their feet will carry them.
Well, I think
I'm wondering if you have any methods in place of avoiding that.
I think for me, it's all in how you frame that, because from my perspective, if you're championing it and being vocal and ringing your bell, if what you're saying is that we want to help you and we want to support best practices and help you in your research and help further the reach of your research and help raise your profile of your research, and we want to help you get those grants and help you do all these things, I think if you're framing it in the supportive an educational way, then you, instead of a thou shalt kind of way, which is not, the way that I don't think any of us would take.
I've been on the receiving end of the thou shalt.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And really, we want to take the inform and educate and be ringing our bells about all the different ways how we're going to help you, instead of, this policy's coming and you better do X, Y, and Z or else kind of thing. Like, it's I think our approach is much more supportive and positive and enthusiastic, instead of, coming down from on high and, you must do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and I think and I think the ringing of the bells is much less of a thou shalt and more of a, here's how we've worked with the libraries and how the library services have helped us in relation to RDM, and more of like a success story.
Yeah.
Which again, I think is, wouldn't be seen as something that's sort of condescending or a thou shalt. It's more of just examples of how this partnership makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is Erin from DAL. I'm trying to frame it more as the benefit of data management is not just because it's a requirement. There are benefits outside of the requirements.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's always benefits with planning and being prepared and mitigating risk and planning for the long term, not just because a funding agency tells you have to plan. So I'm trying to frame it more that way rather than, oh, here's another task you have to do.
Yeah.
Yes, I've noticed that people respond much better to, hey, let me help, than to, you must do!
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And so while it is important that we inform about the tri-agency policy, and so again, this whole webinar was framed around it, I completely agree. It's not, we're doing this because there's a policy. We're doing this because it's good practice and will ultimately produce better research.
Exactly.
And the fact that it may be mandated by our funders, well, that's sort of an added impetus to get moving. Okay, well, I hate to cut off an excellent conversation, but we are at the hour. If you do have further questions, Maggie, if you want to go to the next slide, there's all of our emails, so please feel free. On behalf of our sponsors, I would like to thank all of our wonderful speakers today and all of you for coming. There will be a video recording of the webinar that will be shared out via email and on the CAAL website. And we're also going to be conducting additional webinars on other topics related to RDM in the near future. If you do have ideas for webinars, please, again, email us, and our emails are on the screen. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, folks.